10 Creepy Curses Hidden in Hieroglyphics. One of the world's oldest known writing systems, Egyptian writing dates back more than 5,000 years. The development of hieroglyphs, a system of pictorial symbols utilized by the ancient Egyptians, around 3200 BC marked the beginning of everything. The walls of temples and tombs were adorned with hieroglyphs, which were primarily used for inscriptions of religious and monumental significance. Because of its complexity, hieroglyphic writing was only accessible to the elite, like priests and scribes. The Egyptian writing system developed over time to include additional scripts that were more user-friendly and practical. Around 2600 BC, hieratic content arose as a rearranged and cursive type of pictographs. It was utilized for ordinary purposes like composing letters, keeping records, and composing on papyrus. The hieratic script could be written with a brush and ink, and the streamlined forms made it possible to write faster. Egyptian demotic script, which was even simpler and faster, took its place in 700 BC. Until relatively recently, scientists were baffled by hieroglyphics. The French scholar Jean-François Champollion deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs at the beginning of the 19th century. Since we are now able to read the hieroglyphics, we are beginning to discover some rather ominous messages, such as warnings and curses. Hieroglyphics hold 10 terrifying curses. 10. The Sheikh Abd el-Qurna inscription. Sheikh Abd el-Qurna is a necropolis situated in Thebes, current Luxor, in Egypt. There are a lot of tombs in this area because it is a necropolis. Some of them have eerie inscriptions to keep tomb robbers away. The following is written on a particular slab that is currently in the National Museum of Scotland. Be careful not to take a pebble from its interior to its exterior. You will not violate this stone if you discover it. To be sure, the divine beings since the hour of the people who rest in the mountains gain strength consistently, despite the fact that their stones are hauled away. This eerie hieratic inscription basically warns people that they will face the wrath of the gods and the deceased if they remove even a single stone from the tomb. Notwithstanding, since the message stone itself was eliminated and taken to Scotland with little result, we're presumably protected ignoring this frightening message. 9. Amenhotep Tomb Curse. The tomb of Amenhotep is another tomb in Egypt with a terrifying inscription. Amenhotep's burial place is tracked down in the Valley of the Lords, and there, a fairly startling engraving cautions intruders not to upset the resting ruler. The engraving cautions that anybody who endeavors to take from the burial place will lose their natural riches, suffocate adrift, be scorched to death in a blazing heater, have no replacements, burial chamber, or memorial service, and starve to death. Additionally, they are warned that their bones will die, possibly implying an unpleasant afterlife. Neither is this the entire inscription. Any trespassers who dare to attempt to disturb the king face additional punishments. Fortunately, in current times, that revile doesn't appear to have caused a lot of damage. 8. The Mastabas at Saqqara. Even though the ancient Egyptians are best known for building the pyramids, they also built other kinds of tombs. They also constructed flat-roofed tombs known as mastabas. More than 160 of these types of tombs were found in Saqqara. The burial chambers contain mummies, which are the preserved collections of expired Egyptians. Although some of the tombs do not have eerie inscriptions, others do. Archaeologists say that colorful hieroglyphics in some of the tombs at Saqqara warn anyone who might want to steal from them. One professor at the American University of Cairo claims that the gods will punish any impure persons who enter these tombs. The said discipline appears to have been that the divine beings would wring the individual's neck like a goose. Not the most pleasant way to end your life. Ankhtika Ekeki's Mastabas is one of these inscriptions. As for all men who shall enter this my tomb impure, I shall seize his neck like a bird, reads the inscription on his tomb. 7. The Execration texts. Another startling set of hieroglyphics, the Execution texts, date from the 24th to 22nd centuries BC. Instead of a single set of hieroglyphics, these texts are made up of several different ones that all follow the same pattern. Explanation: Execration texts were cursed pieces of pottery, frequently depicting human-like figures. Dissimilar to the condemnations set in Pharaoh's burial chambers, these specific texts were regularly coordinated against unfamiliar neighbors or adversaries of the state. The way this specific revile worked was that old Egyptians would compose the names of their foes, alongside a revile, on bits of earthenware or stone. They would then break those things and bury the broken pieces. They were typically positioned close to places of worship or on burial grounds. The text on these shards read things, for example, "Butcher him with a blade" or "Destroy him with a lance," reviling the outsiders and unfamiliar urban communities named in the texts to a frightful demise. 6. The Tomb of Ankhtifi. Ankhtifi was a nomarch in ancient Egypt who lived around 2100 BC. In addition, despite the fact that he was not yet a pharaoh, it appears that he was still wary of leaving his tomb unattended. On the walls of his tomb, this eerie message written in hieroglyphics was left by this nobleman. According to the inscription, Heman should reject any ruler who could harm his coffin. Additionally, he declares that the potential tomb raider's heirs will forfeit his inheritance. That may not have stopped modern archaeologists from excavating the tomb, but it seems to have stopped ancient Egyptian thieves from taking items from the grave. 5. Sarenput. An unpleasant inscription was written on Ankhtifi's tomb as well. Another such nomarch is a man named Sarenput, who was a head of Massive during the 12th tradition. In order to safeguard the offerings that were left inside his tomb by one of the god statues, Sarenput wrote an inscription. The engraving states that any individual who attempts to take the contributions from the sculpture inside the burial chamber will meet a frightful destiny. His arm will be removed like that of this bull, his neck will be turned off like that of a bird, his office will not exist, the place of his child will not exist, his home will not exist in Nubia, his burial chamber will not exist in the necropolis, his god will not acknowledge his white bread, his tissue will have a place with the fire. His youngsters will have a place with the fire, his body will not be to the ground, I will be against him as a crocodile on the water, as a snake on the planet, and as a foe in the necropolis. In other words, even if you are an archaeologist, you might want to think twice before entering this tomb. Otherwise, the ghost of Sarenput might follow you. For Harkhuf's tomb. Harkhuf was an ancient Egyptian explorer who lived during the 6th dynasty. It seems like he liked the idea that his rulers cursed his tomb. On the wall of his tomb, he left an inscription that mostly talks about his experiences in the afterlife. However, he also issues a warning to anyone who dares to disturb his peace by entering his tomb. The inscription reads, "I will seize him like a wild fowl for anyone who enters this tomb. The extraordinary God will choose him." Albeit this probably won't appear as though an especially undermining message, this was a revile you would have rather not screwed with, as per old Egyptian guidelines. During the age of the pyramids, the worst curse anyone could bestow upon anyone was to be cursed by the great god. 3. The Tomb of Ankhmahor. Yet another tomb in Saqqara is that of Ankhmahor. A curse prevents tomb robbers from entering the deceased man's final resting place, like many others in the area do. As for that which anyone might do against this my tomb, the same will be done to his property, reads the particular inscription. I am an excellent priest who is familiar with all kinds of magic, including occult spells. If anyone enters my tomb unclean or does not purify themselves, I will seize him like a goose and make him fear ghosts roaming the earth. In other words, the priest who is buried in this tomb is familiar with magic and doesn't hesitate to use it. Therefore, if you ever find yourself exploring Saqqara, you might want to steer clear of this particular burial ground. 2. The Tomb of Senenmut. Senenmut was Queen Hatshepsut's royal advisor and a high priest. As a matter of fact, there are even some who say the two were sweethearts. Whether Senenmut and the sovereign at any point had anything going on, after Senenmut kicked the bucket, his burial chamber was built near the sovereign's and her pharaohs. At the time, this was a huge privilege, which is why some people think there might have been some funny business going on. When archaeologists discovered the well-preserved tomb, they discovered an eerie curse inside. "His lifetime shall not exist on earth" was written in the tomb as a curse for anyone who dared enter Senenmut's resting place. Thankfully, modern archaeologists who have explored the tomb have made numerous important discoveries about ancient Egypt, and this warning does not appear to have stopped them. 1. The Tomb of Hezi. In Saqqara, a popular burial ground in ancient Egypt, is where Hezi's tomb is. The body of a nobleman who lived in ancient Egypt during the Old Kingdom is in this particular tomb. The hieroglyphic inscriptions on the walls of this burial site, like those in many other tombs, begin by discussing Hezi's life. But from there, things start to get a little weird. The hieroglyphics begin with a brief but effective curse after the biographical section, as for anyone who will enter this tomb after he has eaten abominations or after he has copulated with women, together with him, I will be judged in the great God's council. Strangely, this revile nearly appears to censure the intruder as well as Hezi himself. We can only hope that neither the deceased man nor anyone else was responsible for those unfavorable outcomes. If you love this video, please subscribe to the channel to receive the earliest notification of the next videos. Click the like and share button to spread this video to everyone. And please take a look at the video description to support us. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.